My students, good afternoon. Welcome to the Department of Biochemistry, Nasarawa State University, KEFI. I'm among the resource persons that will be guiding you through this introductory parts of biochemistry. That is BCH211, General Biochemistry 1. What is biochemistry? Biochemistry has become the foundation for understanding all biological processes. It has provided explanations for the causes of many diseases in humans, animals, and plants. Biochemistry is the application of chemistry to the study of biological processes at the cellular and molecular level. So when you are asked to define biochemistry, you go straight ahead to say biochemistry is the application of chemistry to the study of biological processes at cellular and molecular level. The word bio means life, and the word chemistry, you know the meaning of chemistry from your secondary school. So when you study the chemistry of life, you are doing biochemistry. It emerged as a distinct discipline around the beginning of 20th century, that is about 1930. Before then, biochemistry was studied under physiology. When you see any textbook that is old, any old physiology textbook, you will discover that part of the biochemistry is in the physiology textbook. So later on, scientists combine chemistry, physiology, and biology to investigate the chemistry of living systems. So, by studying the structure and behavior of complex molecules found in biological material and the ways these molecules interact to form cells, tissues, and whole organisms. Principles of biochemistry. Cells. We know that from our secondary school that the structural and functional unit of life are the cells. So it's the basic structure of life. Living processes contain thousands of chemical pathways. Certain important pathways, e.g. glycolysis, is found in almost all organisms. So these are the principles in biochemistry. All organisms use the same type of molecules. What are these molecules? The carbohydrates, which in our secondary school, they will tell you energy-giving food. That is carbohydrates. What they taught you in secondary school are sources of carbohydrate, for instance. They will tell you sources of carbohydrates, like for instance, rice, beans, and the rest. These are sources of carbohydrate. You have proteins, you have lipid, you have nucleic acid. The whole of biochemistry, you'll be talking about these major macromolecules. The next one is the DNA. You have the carbohydrates, you have the proteins, you have the lipids, you have the nucleic acids. So the nucleic acids are divided into two. In the nucleus of a cell, you have the DNA and the RNA. So the instructions, the information for growth, reproduction, development for each organism is encoded in this DNA. The branches of biochemistry. By this biochemistry, you have the genetics, you have molecular biology. So when you combine genetics, molecular biology, biochemistry, you will be able to understand the functions of genes and proteins. Do not forget that the genes, when we say genes, we are talking of the information in the DNA. A specific segment of DNA that code for a particular amino acid or for a particular function, we call it gene. There is gene for sight, there is gene for tallness, there is gene for color of skin, etc. Importance of biochemistry. The importance of biochemistry can never be overemphasized. Biochemistry helps understand the chemical aspect of different biological processes such as digestion, respiration, reproduction, excretion, the behavior of hormones, contraction, and relaxation of muscle. All these processes are studied in biochemistry and the application. It plays a vital role in health and nutrition. All sciences are towards making life better, improving quality of life. To improve quality of life, one of basic important thing is the health. Health is wealth. Once you are healthy, you will be able to enjoy the life. And the health is intertwined with nutrition. Without nutrition, there will be no good health. So in biochemistry, we have an area, we call it nutritional biochemistry. We have an area, we call it medical biochemistry, and other areas of biochemistry. So biochemistry, it solves fundamental problems in biology and medicine. Knowing the enzymes and their functions, the macromolecules and their function will assist in applying the knowledge in biology and medicine. I give you, for instance, some of the major causes of death in the hospital today are due to poor understanding of biochemistry. Simple miscalculation of the pH that a particular drug is supposed to work will make the drug not to be properly absorbed. I give you an example. I have a friend, his mother is diabetic. She has diabetes. She was taken to hospital for treatment of malaria. Unfortunately, the first thing they did after giving her injection, they gave her dextrose saline. In biochemical terms, when we say dextrose, it means it contains sugar. That is sugar. So somebody that has diabetes now is given dextrose saline, and that was the cause of her death. What is the problem? Because the people that attended to her had poor knowledge of biochemistry, or they didn't take her history. They went ahead to infuse her with dextrose water. Simple normal saline, when we say normal saline, for instance, is sodium chloride. Somebody that is hypertensive, if you decide to infuse him with normal saline without knowing that the person is hypertensive, you are complicating the hypertension. Remember your physics. When there is increase in volume, there will be increase in pressure. So increasing the volume of blood will definitely increase the pressure. And so lack of good knowledge of biochemistry can lead one to kill in the hospital. And so it is essential for us to understand biochemistry. It is a vast branch of science that offers endless possibilities, enormous scope for employment, hence reducing global poverty and starvation. Therefore, biochemistry is essential as a sustainable tool for survival. Unfortunately, the application, of course, is limited in Nigeria, but we hope in the nearest future, all other aspects of biochemistry will be seen in action. I did my IT industrial attachment in pharmaceutical company, and I'll be happy to tell you that as an IT student, due to sound background in biochemistry, I was able to correct some of the mistake they were doing in analysis in the quality control room because of the knowledge of biochemistry. So, if you have first degree in biochemistry, for instance, you can go for clinical pharmacy, that is PharmD. You can go and specialize in PharmD. If you have first degree in biochemistry, you can go and study medicine. In fact, if I have the power, I will make it compulsory. Anybody that has to go for medicine, MBBS, should first and foremost study either biochemistry, anatomy, physiology at first degree, preferably biochemistry, because it is the nucleus of life sciences. Scope of biochemistry, medical sciences, I have said it, agriculture, in agriculture. When we say medical sciences, in medicine, if you go to the hospital, we have different units. We have the doctor. The doctor himself requires the knowledge of biochemistry because he needs to know the knowledge of biochemistry and the knowledge of physiology before he will be able to know that there is abnormal situation in the biological system. We have pathology. It can be, we have chemical pathology. In the hospital, when you go to the laboratory section, there is hematology, which of course, you must have the knowledge of biochemistry, it's purely biochemistry. We have pathology, chemical pathology, where you do a lot of thesis. You have medical microbiology, including the medical microbiology you do in the hospital. You cannot be effective in doing your culture and sensitivity without having knowledge of the biochemistry of the microorganisms. You have today, for instance, like HIV test, you want to test for hepatitis, all these we check you can check the RNA, that is the RNA of the virus. The virus is an RNA virus. So what you do is transcriptomics. It has to do with the transcription. So what you assay there, purely the knowledge of biochemistry is the one that will assist you in determining whether the person has hepatitis, HIV, to mention them. That is in the laboratory. Coming to the pharmacy units. In the pharmacy units, of course, they are dealing with drugs. The drugs we are talking about, they have drug interaction. It's not every drug you take with every food. So you need to know biochemistry, how macromolecules, how they interact, the micromolecules, how they interact. Coming to genetic engineering and recombinant DNA has assisted us a lot today to produce drugs. For instance, insulin. Before now, insulin was produced using pig, but some religion like the Judaism, Islam, for instance, pig is not allowed. But with genetic engineering, you can multiply the insulin. Getting the insulin gene, you clone it, you multiply it, you isolate, you purify. So all these things are not possible without the knowledge of biochemistry. Agriculture, you have the kind of weather, we have different weather, we have different climates. If you go to, for instance, places like Morocco, like Egypt, you see their rice is quite different. They have different species of rice. Their local rice is different. It was modified to survive in their environment due to the kind of water they have and the soil. So this is knowledge of biochemistry. We have pesticides, all this herbicide we are using. It's the knowledge of biochemistry that assists. Food industry, the foods we consume, you need a lot of knowledge of biochemistry. So biochemistry is a compulsory course to food scientists, to dietitians, to clinicians, and the rest. What you don't like to hear, you student, is academics and research. But of course, all those things I mentioned, the hospital, the pharmaceutical industry, and the food industry, the origin is the academics and research. So if you you are able to study biochemistry at first degree, you have good grade, the sky is your limit. Because every life science depend on biochemistry to progress. Cell. When I mention cell, it's known to every one of us. We did cell when we are in secondary school. And so the living matter is composed of mainly 6 elements: carbon, oxygen, nitrogen, phosphorus, sulfur. These are the basic elements. That is why Ibn Khaldun, he said, human beings or life begins from elements. And this is, of course, these elements together constitute about 90% of the dry weight of the human body. This element. Several other functionally important elements also found in the cells include calcium, potassium, sodium, chlorine, and the rest. So, I can comfortably say human being is a compound of hydrocarbon. Yes. We call hydrocarbons, we call these macromolecules, the ones I mentioned: carbohydrate, protein, lipids, and the rest. In biochemical terms, we call them foil compounds. That is, they give us foil. You take your car, well, you need to go and foil your car. Car is made of hydrocarbons. The food we eat is made of hydrocarbons. So, and what they give, the result is the same: energy. At the end, you get energy and you need the energy to work. So, we are composed of elements. For that, we are composed of elements. Cells are the basic building blocks of life. The smallest living unit of an organism is the cell. Cell grows. Cells can grow, reproduce, use energy, adapt, respond to their environment. Many cannot be seen with the naked eye, and you can't see most of the cells with the naked eye. Of course, we have some microorganisms. They are organisms, but you cannot even see them with the naked eye. A cell may be an entire organism, or it may be one of the billions of cells that make up the organism. The cells can be prokaryotes or eukaryotes. The prokaryotes, they include the bacteria. They lack nucleus or membrane-bound structures. The eukaryotes, this is an example of a prokaryote. You see, it has a flagella. It's an example. Prokaryotes. Eukaryotes are cells that have nucleus and membrane-bound organelles. Looking at the evolution, the life on Earth begins with single cell. The single cell, of course, it makes sense. After the Big Bang, there was, the soup, the biological soup in the ocean, where you have the beginning of the first life. That's why there was a time some scientists, they try to, since we know the component of the cells, they say, okay, let's bring this component together and assemble and have a cell. But you can assemble these things together, but the problem is the life inside the cell is a miracle, it's mystery. We don't know how to, until today, we don't know how to make cell to be living. There is difference between a cell living or between cell is alive and an organism is living. So this is a structure of a typical eukaryotic cell. It has a nucleus, it has and other organelles we shall see later. Two main types of eukaryotic cell. We have the animal cell and the plant cell. One interesting thing is this. If you look at the plant kingdom, the most developed plants have some characteristics of animal. So you will see that it has some characteristics of a primitive animal. This is to tell you that life started from somewhere. Characteristics of biomembranes and organelles. You have the plasma membrane. It's a lipid. It has lipid, protein, carbohydrate complex. The plasma membrane, that's the coverage covering the cell. It serves as a barrier that prevents the entrance and exit of molecules. This is very important. We shall see it later because it's very important in transport and signaling systems, synthesis of ATP and all sorts of things. The integrity of the cell membrane is very important. Nucleus double membrane surrounding the chromosomes and the nucleus. There are pores that allow specific communication with the cytoplasm. There must be communication between the nucleus and the cytoplasm. For instance, the DNA has to communicate to the cytoplasm. Assuming you have a gene, you have to copy that gene and the information will be taken to cytoplasm. Usually the messenger is what we call messenger RNA. So there are pores that enables communication. The nucleus is a site for synthesis of RNA, making up the ribosome. The mitochondria are surrounded by a double membrane with a series of folds called the cristae. The major function of mitochondria is energy production. That is why even in our secondary school, we usually say the site for the synthesis of ATP is the mitochondria. When you say mitochondria, that is the plural. When you say mitochondrium, it means one singular. Later on, it has been discovered that the mitochondria has its own DNA. Recently, even a clone baby produced from three organisms was achieved, from three parents, was achieved. This is because they wanted to escape the mitochondrial DNA from the mother. So they got mitochondrial DNA from a donor. This is because most of the genetic diseases you see are X-linked and they are from the mitochondria. Chloroplast, surrounded by a double membrane containing stacked thylakoid membranes, responsible for photosynthesis. In animal cells, we have mitochondria, but in plant cells, we have the chloroplast. The chloroplast is responsible for photosynthesis. It traps the light energy for the synthesis of sugar. The light energy is trapped in the chlorophyll. The plant will absorb water and minerals from the roots, and in the presence of light, your sugar is synthesized. In photosynthesis, we have the light reaction, and in secondary school they will tell you, and the dark reaction. But when you come to biochemistry proper, we will not tell you dark reaction, rather. So we rather tell you carbon dioxide fixation. Rough endoplasmic reticulum, a network of interconnected membranes forming channels within the thylakoid membranes, covered with ribosomes, causing the rough appearance. You can see it has some stud. So that is why we call it rough endoplasmic reticulum, and the process of protein synthesis takes place in the rough endoplasmic reticulum. This is the rough continuation. This is the rough endoplasmic reticulum. Ribosomes, protein and RNA complex responsible for protein synthesis. The ribosomes are responsible also for protein synthesis. We have the smooth endoplasmic reticulum, a network of interconnected membranes forming channels within the cell. It's a site for synthesis and metabolism of lipids. Also contains enzymes for detoxifying chemicals, including drugs and pesticides. When you take compounds that contain chemicals, they would be detoxified in the smooth endoplasmic reticulum. This pesticide we use and drugs. Golgi apparatus, a series of stacked membrane vesicles, small membranes surrounded bags, carry materials from the rough endoplasmic reticulum to the Golgi apparatus. Vesicles move between the stack while the proteins are processed to a mature form. Golgi apparatus is the press whereby when you produce your protein, it will be processed to ensure that the protein is okay. After protein synthesis, it will be processed in the Golgi apparatus. Then it will be secreted to the final destination. Lysozymes, a membrane-bound organelle that is responsible for degrading proteins and membranes in the cell, and also helps degrade materials ingested by the cell. Sometimes when you have cells, dead cells or materials unwanted in the cells, the lysozymes are those that will assist to degrade these materials. Membrane-bound surrounded bags that contain water and storage materials in plants. We have vacuum. In the plant, we have vacuum. Peroxisome produce and degrade hydrogen peroxide. Hydroperoxide is a toxic compound that can be produced during metabolism. During metabolism, free radicals can be produced, such as the toxic compound like the hydrogen peroxide, so they can be handled by the peroxisomes. The cell wall Plant has cell wall, while the animals have cell membrane. The difference, the cell wall is rigid, whereas the animal cell is not rigid. We have cytoskeleton, areas of protein filament in the cytosol, gives the cell its shape and provide basis for movement, e.g. microtubules and microfilament. These are called cytoskeleton. Biomolecules. Just like cells are building blocks of tissues, when cells are made of elements, as I earlier mentioned, they come together to form the bases. We call them nitrogenous bases. The combination of these nitrogenous bases will give you, for instance, the DNA and the RNA. So elements come together to form cell. When you put cells together, they form tissue. So as the cells are the building block for tissues, likewise, biomolecules are building blocks for the cell. The biomolecules come together to form the cell. The cells come together to form the tissues. So we can say, from when you are studying atom, basically we are studying physics. You take a single atom, you are studying physics. You have two atoms, you are already studying them, you are studying already the chemistry, the interaction between these two atoms. Now, these molecules now come together to form cell. When you are studying cell already, you are doing biology. Now, when you are studying the molecules, interaction of the molecules in the biological system, you are already doing biochemistry. Or when you are studying after the cells, you have tissues. After the tissues, you have organ. So when you are after the organs, you have system. When you study system, you are studying physiology. Each system, you say circulatory system, reproductive system. This is what we call physiology. So when you are studying the circulatory system, you are studying how the blood goes around the body and the rest. So the biochemistry is, you have to know the blood, the component of the blood, what is made of the blood, and etc. So let me not digress too much. Let's come back. Cells, collection of cells give rise to tissue, and collection of biomolecules are the building blocks for the cell. Animal and plant cells contain approximately 10,000 kinds of molecules. Water constitutes 50 to 95% of cells contained by weight. That is why when you go to the hospital and you are dehydrated, the first thing is to give you normal saline to replace the lost fluid, because we are practically made of water. The ions like sodium, potassium, calcium may account for another 1%. So almost all other kinds of biomolecules which are carbon, hydrogen, nitrogen, oxygen, phosphorus, sulfur, infinite variety of molecules contain carbon. So most compounds, of course, they have carbon. You are going to see carbon is the major constituent. Carbohydrate has carbon, lipid has carbon, protein has carbon, anything, it has carbon, all the biomolecules. The difference is usually is on the amino acid, on the nitrogen, the nitrogen content, the sulfur, the phosphorus. Most biomolecules considered to be derived from hydrocarbons. So we can say we are hydrocarbons. Biomolecules. The chemical properties of organic biomolecules are determined by their functional groups. Most biomolecules have more than one functional groups. Depending on the functional group, some they have aldehyde, some they have ketone, some they have carboxylic group. Look at it, for instance, the major class of biomolecules, the building block of proteins. Protein has 20 standard amino acids. 20 standard amino acids. If you attended good secondary school, they must have taught you this. But if they didn't, they will teach you amino acid chemistry, and you will know this. So you have 20 amino acids. This is a typical structure of amino acid. This is the carbon. You can see I told you we must have carbon in all the macromolecules or the biomolecules. You can see carbon here. You can see another carbon here. Now you can see oxygen. Of course, this is a carboxyl group. Of course, we know this. This is a carboxyl group. This we call this alpha hydrogen. When you are counting, you start counting from the carboxyl group from this end. You call it alpha. If you have another carbon, it will be beta. This is alpha carbon. This is alpha hydrogen. That is why we call this alpha amino acid. This is the amino group. You see this is nitrogen, and you see this is positive. Why am I having positive here? We know that carbon can only have 4 bonds. This is a bond, this is a bond, this is hydrogen, you can write it here, and this is a bond. So the carbon has 4 hydrogens. You know, this is the reason why the Muslims marry 4 wives, so that they will be highly stable. To attain stability, you need to behave like carbon. Okay, all right. This is the nitrogen. It needs 1, 2, 3. But when you do that, you will have excess of 1. That is why you are having positive here. I can make it. That is the amino acid is ionized. This is the negative, and you can see this is the positive. But if it is not ionized, I will have H2 in this place, and then there will be no negative, it will be hydrogen. So this is the basic difference between, I would say, for instance, I will tell you amino acid glutamate. When I say glutamate and I say glutamic acid, when I say glutamate, it means it's in the ionized form. When I say glutamic acid, I have the hydrogen, I have H2 here. All right, let's go back. The amino acid, the major class of biomolecules, we have the amino acid. The R group site determines the chemical properties of each amino group. This is the R group. Depending on every amino acid has this basic skeleton. We have this. Every amino acid. The differences between all the amino acids is the R group, or we call it the side chain. The R group determines the properties of the amino group. If the R group you attach here are hydrophobic, it will be hydrophobic amino acids. If it is hydrophilic, it will be hydrophilic amino acid. They will teach you more in details in amino acid chemistry. Also determines how the protein folds and its biological function. The R group, the properties of the amino acid will determine how the protein is going to fold. And the way a protein folded will also affect the function of the protein. Individual amino acid and protein connected by peptides. This amino acid, Each of these amino acids will be connected to another amino acid, and that is how it forms a peptide. When we say peptide, it means collection of amino acids. When you have plenty of amino acid coming together, they give you peptide, and that is protein. When you have the scientists differentiate sometimes. When you say peptide, it means few amino acids, and when we say protein, it means many amino acids coming together to form protein. The next, sugar. Good number of you, they like sugar, especially the girls. They cannot sit down in class for 1 hour without taking sugar. You see them with chocolate, with sweet, all those things. So why do we have to take sugar? Sometimes after lecture, for sometimes after 1 hour, 2 hours, you begin to get tired. So what is the secret that when you take coffee or you take chocolate, you take biscuit, you get back your energy? It's because the brain cells, they depend primarily on sugar. So that is why I advise my students, when you are reading and you discover you're exhausted, if you don't have the biscuits to eat, or you don't have a coffee by the side to take, you better go and eat and rest. If not, you will waste your time because you will not comprehend. This is because the brain cells depend on sugar. So carbohydrate is very, very important. So it's the most abundant organic molecule in nature. Carbohydrate is the most abundant. Every form of life depends on carbohydrate. Every form of life. Without carbohydrates, no survival. Synthesize and plant from complex series of reactions involving photosynthesis. The plant synthesizes its own carbohydrates, but the animals, we human beings and other animals, we have to get this carbohydrate from the food we eat. So the sources of carbohydrate includes rice, beans, pounded yam, my best dish, of course. The carbohydrates or the sugars are of different types. We have the monosaccharide, we have the disaccharide, we have the polysaccharide, as you did in your secondary school. The basic unit is monosaccharides. Monosaccharide can form larger molecules, e.g. glycogen. When you eat a lot of food, some of you that eat and eat and eat and eat, ideally your stomach's supposed to break, but that doesn't happen. When you eat so much food, why is it that when I eat too much, I don't become diabetic? Ideally, when I eat too much sugar or I take Coke, 10 bottles of Coke in a day, the sugar should be too much in my body. Ideally, yes. Because it contains sugars. Oh, it will not happen that way. Because the monosaccharide, the sugar, the Coke contains sugars, they will be broken down, they will be absorbed. The excess that you don't actually need will be converted to glycogen. So the glycogen is the storage form of sugar. This glycogen will be useful to you later on. When you exhausted the sugar you have in the blood, when it becomes low, there will be communication between the brain and the pancreatic beta cells. The insulin, something called insulin, we did in secondary school. Insulin will be released, the glucose will be converted to glycogen, and it will be stored as glycogen. So this glycogen, when you're hungry, it will be broken down and go back to the bloodstream, and then you begin to get energy. That is the secret. When you are fasting, sometimes you started feeling weak, but later on you started to regain your energy because the stored glucose glycogen was broken down. If that is exhausted, there are other sources. You get to know as you study biochemistry. Functions. Store energy in the form of starch in plant photosynthesis. We say store energy as how? Oh, mind you, the sugar, the starch you are talking about, you have a lot of glucose together to form starch. Where is the energy in the starch? The bond between the glucose, in the bond between the sugars, between a sugar to sugar, you have bonds. So the energy is stored there. When you break the bond, you release the energy. So in plant, they store the energy in the form of the sugar in plants, and in humans, in animals and human being, in the form of glycogen. So in human being, we store what we call starch. In plants, we have starch is stored, and in animals, we have glycogen. I think in WIC, they usually ask this question. This starch or the glycogen provide energy through metabolism. That's what we call metabolism, breaking down, either breaking or building of metabolism. You use you need energy for metabolism. So you remember, let me just give you this. Sometimes when you eat, you feel tired. Immediately after eating, for instance, sometimes you feel weak. You feel weak. You want to sleep because some energy that are stored in you are being utilized to break down the food you've just eaten. So when the energy level in your body becomes low, you have to feel sleepy. Of course, your brain, remember, you have to feel sleepy. So, but after the macromolecules, the sugars or the macromolecules are broken down, they will release energy and you will regain your strength. The carbohydrate also forms structural component in cells and tissues, what we call, and is also important in intercellular communication. Another macromolecule is the fatty acid. Fatty acid. I've just said something. You see, my students, if you want to you want to do TDB, and you went to Mama Amala, and you ask her to give you pepper soup, is there or anything very fatty, and when you are taking the pepper soup of either chicken or anything that is, it has a lot of fat, and the food is oily. Oh my God, oily food. And somebody may take also milk, just milk that is very rich, full cream. When you do all these things, you are taking fat. You eat bread with margarine, butter, you are taking fat. And please, if you want to read, you are not expected to eat food that is rich in fat. Yes, because it will drain the energy in your body, because you need a lot of energy to break down fats, and that will make you weak. However, if you are going to the farm, you can take fatty food. By the time you started constructing the first ridges, the second ridges, you will discover you start that day you will walk and walk and walk, because fat has the highest amount of energy. It gives the highest amount of energy. But for you as students, your food should not be rich in fat. You should take little fat, especially when you want to read during exam period. Take more of carbohydrates and a little protein. Also protein, yes, because it takes long, of course. Take protein, take carbohydrates, and but little fat. So fats are monocarboxylic acids that they contain even carbon atoms. We have two types. We have saturated and unsaturated. The fatty acids are component of several lipid molecules. When we say lipid molecules, they include triglycerol, steroids. Example of several are cholesterol, sex hormones, fat, and soluble vitamins. Functions: storage of energy in the form of fat, membrane structure. Fat, of course, just discouraging you for because you are a student, but I'm not saying you should not take lipid completely. You need it. Your skin that is fresh is as a result of the fats. You know, the cream. That's why ladies they go to buy cream so that their skin will be smooth. That is the secret behind it is the fats, the fats, the cholesterol, the cholesterol. It's very important also. You see, sometimes during the cold, you'll be complaining. You are feeling cold, but you see some of the ladies, you see them with mini skirts. You'll be wondering, don't worry, because they have more fat deposits. So fat also serve as insulation. We call it thermal blankets. It's a blanket. The ladies have more fat, especially at the adipose tissues. Generally have more fat. Of course, it has to be like that for so many reasons. You don't need to mention them. In the synthesis of hormones, you also need fat, cholesterol, the synthesis and other lipids. In the synthesis of hormone, you need lipids generally. So fat, important component. You are going to discuss all these things by the various lecturers. Each of the macromolecule will be discussed one after the other, and you continue to discuss this even after your PhD.